The Königsberg region was long regarded as the cradle of Prussia, the power that ultimately united the whole of Germany. It is therefore not surprising that the region played a central role in the German Empire and the later Weimar Republic. However, after the Second World War, this important province was to fall to the Soviet Union, which expelled the Germans and initiated an immediate Russification. The region was renamed Kaliningrad and, as an exclave of Russia, lost more and more of its importance. As a result, the German heritage was also lost and hardly anything reminds us of the region's former heyday. But is that really true? How German is Kaliningrad really still today? How many people there identify as German? And why did last year in particular play such a decisive role? We look at all these questions in today's video. To do this, we first need to look back in history and look at the rise of Königsberg and Prussia. The history of Königsberg begins around the year 1255 when the Teutonic Order, a Roman Catholic order of knights, founded the city. This took place in the context of the Northern Crusades, the aim of which was to Christianize the Balts. And thanks to the successes of the Teutonic Order, Königsberg quickly developed into an important center and hub for trade, politics and culture in the Baltic region. Königsberg became a Hanseatic city, which led to further economic growth, and the University of Königsberg was founded, where important personalities such as Immanuel Kant studied. And politically, the Teutonic Order finally became the state of Prussia. The Königsberg region also benefited from Prussia's rapid rise to become a major European power. This also became clear when the German states were united to form the German Empire. The entire province of East Prussia was now administered from Königsberg. And despite numerous violent battles in the First World War, the Allies also saw the importance of East Prussia for Germany, which is why the region remained in Germany, unlike most of the other eastern territories. However, it was now separated from the rest of the country, which caused it to lose much of its economic importance. But the worst times were yet to come for Königsberg. It was first the scene of fierce fighting and then, in August of the year 1944, was bombed so heavily by the Allies that the historic old town was almost completely destroyed. With the Red Army's offensive at the beginning of the year 1945, Königsberg was finally besieged and conquered in April of the same year. And they did not give it back. East Prussia was divided after the war, with the south going to Poland and the north being placed under Soviet administration. And so began a new chapter in the history of Königsberg, which was now renamed Kaliningrad. The remaining German inhabitants of the city were largely expelled, and the city was populated primarily with Russians and other population groups from the Soviet Union. The city's German language, culture and identity were systematically suppressed and replaced by Soviet influences. Soviet architecture and urban planning now dominated the cityscape, while the remains of the old German buildings and infrastructure were largely neglected. During the Soviet era, Kaliningrad was heavily militarized and closed to foreigners for a long time due to its strategic importance on the Baltic Sea and its proximity to NATO countries. This contributed to the city's further isolation and distinction from its German past. But anyone who thinks that all German memories have disappeared is mistaken. After the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991, Kaliningrad became part of Russia, opening up to foreign visitors and bringing about a certain revival of German history and culture. A notable example of this is Königsberg Cathedral, which was one of the few buildings to survive the destruction of the Second World War and was later restored. Incidentally, its crypt contains the grave of the famous philosopher Immanuel Kant, a symbol of the city. And other German architectural traces, although less visible, are still present. Some streets have kept their German names and occasionally you can still see half-timbered buildings. German culture and language also survived the Soviet era in some parts. There is still a small but active German community that helps to keep the German heritage alive. It is estimated that it consists of several thousand inhabitants. German-Russian meeting centers were also established and some schools offered German as a foreign language, which was intended to provide younger generations with a connection to the city's German roots. However, the situation deteriorated dramatically last year. Kaliningrad's German population also suffered greatly as a result of the brutal Russian war of aggression. Cut off from Russia and also cut off from the European markets, a very hard time began for the inhabitants. And many Germans now feel oppressed by the Russians, who repeatedly threaten them with expropriation. And Kaliningrad is also repeatedly becoming the center of conflict between European and Russian politicians. Only recently, Poland renamed Kaliningrad to its original, medieval name of Królewik. Incidentally, Russia then threatened to give Polish cities German names again. And the Suwalki Gap, the most important supply line to Kaliningrad, is a recurring source of conflict between NATO and the EU and Russia. But that is material for a separate video.